Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Framing the Force here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Batts, and joining me every week to discuss a galaxy far, far away is Robby Weidemann. Robby, how are you doing?
I'm doing about as okay as you can for surviving a hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, that's intense. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's all right. We're good.
So yeah, this week we're talking all things Mando-Verse with The Mandalorian and Grogu currently in production and Skeleton Crew right around the corner. We thought what better time than now to chat about this current era of Star Wars. So Robby, let's start with where it all began. What was your initial reaction to The Mandalorian, both as a show, but also the entire concept of a live action Star Wars TV show?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone is kind of in a universal agreement that season one came out swinging. Did was not
Yeah.
here to play. Just put its foot crashing through the door and left a nice footprint with that crash, and it was excellent. I mean, I don't think anything. Maybe season two. But I don't think anything like in terms of just really quality, just for story, visuals, just pacing, like it really hit all the marks in that first season, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think the visuals have come any closer because Greg Fraser did that first season,
God bless
who
that
is
man.
the GOAT, literally my favorite
I
cinematographer.
absolutely adore Greg Fraser.
Um, and I don't think anyone's like figured out the volume that's touched
No.
it since
The
him.
only I mean, literally the next closest is Spielberg because
Right.
he used it in The Fablemans, and I did not know that that was used at all. I saw that after the fact, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
If
well."
anyone can figure
I
it
mean,
out,
I
it's
guess
it's Spielberg.
yeah, I guess if you're Spielberg or Greg Fraser, like, you're
Yeah,
doing it right, but yeah, it's,
but I mean, so with the addition of that, like it also continued that Star Wars like tradition of pushing the technology forward, and you did get that
mhm,
forward leap with with the volume, and it was really nice to have that because the film, the sequel trilogy, and even the stories
mhm,
didn't really give you crazy technological advances forward. They were just more of a modern film, and I mean, obviously top quality all through and through with all of the effects and everything. It's ILM.
mhm,
That's their thing. Like
yeah,
they're the cream of the crop, top of the top. But they didn't really there was it didn't feel like there was that like significant push that Star Wars had always been held to or that brought to the table with it.
yeah.
And with the introduction of the volume in season one, I think it was that nice. Oh, Star Wars is advancing filmmaking again. So
Yeah, it's a
I
big
really enjoyed that.
I think it's the difference between like for the sequel movies, it's less like revolutionizing or like having a very like, oh, things are different in the industry now because of this
Mhm.
thing, and more of a just like, as you were saying, like refining and I mean they're the best at that, like at
Yeah, no one does
the
it
effects
better.
that they're doing, like that's the best it gets, but it wasn't that like, oh, this significantly changes
Wasn't a
things.
leap,
Whereas
yeah.
yeah, whereas the volume like does significantly change things for
And it
how
definitely has changed
things are
things. Just
used.
I mean, the amount of productions
That
past
use it. Oh,
Lucasfilm
it's
Star Wars that have incorporated it.
unreal. Yeah.
And I mean, they even they have like I feel I want to say they have like a portable one now or a smaller version of it that
Oh,
they
there's
bring
so
out to
many.
like events and yeah, like it's just like a it definitely has in terms of production values across the board
Mhm,
just made so many more things possible and definitely changed the game there. Um, in terms of like just Mando, the story, I
mhm.
really liked it. I really liked season one and season two. I feel like when we talk about Mando, like season two isn't too crazy to. It was so close to season one or close enough,
Mhm.
and there was nothing that was another show in between it or anything, kind of chopping that up. It was kind of a back to back season, so I
Yeah.
feel like it's still kind of in that first era. But yeah, the first two seasons were great. Season two finale was excellent. Um,
Mhm.
I loved, and especially in season one, I really did like Grogu. I love Grogu. Like I am a Grogu fan. I know you're not. I know you're gonna talk
Okay,
about
I'll wait.
it.
I'll wait. We'll get there.
Let me say my piece real quick. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
short
yeah.
and
No,
sweet,
it's
and
fine.
I still kind of feel this way, not as heavily because I don't know, time has gone by and I've seen how the story has developed. but from the get or from like my initial reactions, I absolutely loved Grogu because I thought with him, and I still do think this way, comes a lot of potential. The one thing I don't like about him is it's the only merchandise you freaking see. Put something else on the damn shelves. I'm
It's like
tired
the
of
number
seeing
one
him.
reason I hate that little guy.
Yeah, and like, see, I think it's fair to hate him from a merchandise perspective. I don't think his character itself
I got problems with his
deserves all
character
of
too.
the onslaught it gets, but I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But I really do like the potential that comes with him because you have 900 years of storytelling
Mhm.
that you could have with just one character. Which, yes, it could be excessive in one way, but if you could like gap it out, space it out, or whatever, it'd be really. I think it'd be really cool to see, especially someone of Yoda's species, and just we've had almost what 45 whatever years of Yoda, and
Mhm.
but we've only ever known him like 850 plus years old,
Yeah,
more or
except
less.
for
So seeing
yeah.
how his species develops, being how rare it is, and how that there's like three of them,
Mhm.
and they're not the stories are very sparse unless it's actually Yoda. I mean, I want to see how what that species how it deals with the Force, like how it ages, because obviously Grogu's 50, he's a baby, but Yoda said he's been training Jedi for 800 years. So by like 100, homeboy was teaching things. Like he was a
Yeah.
master at that point pretty much. So I really want to see that,
They're like
specifically that next 50 years, but
yeah.
I just want to see how slow or rapid they grow as just an individual in terms of just them,
Like
like their
maturity and
species,
like
maturity,
knowledge
and
and
the
yeah.
Force as well on that aspect. So I do really like Grogu because of the doors he opens up in the storytelling perspective.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think Din's sick. Like he's just got cool armor. But I mean,
He does
I
have
think
sick.
his armor's so damn clean. Like
I'm
there's
still yeah, it's great.
like I'm really glad. Like I'm really glad. Like that was a quick change in the show because it's so nice. But I do hate that it literally just makes him like a like literal plot armor. That man,
Mm,
like you can't do
yeah.
anything to him. So that's how that was my initial reactions, and kind of still how I feel more or less. But I want to hear you. I've been
Okay,
waiting
so
to
yeah, well,
have
I'll
this
talk about
conversation.
I'm gonna talk about Grokuverse just so because those thoughts are like right at the top and I don't want to miss any. So I think the main thing for me and the difference in my perspective on him from you is that I cannot give him any points for potentials
Hmm.
because like I'm not gonna give him credence and stuff for something that they haven't actually done
That's fair.
anything for. Like they haven't gone through those doors yet or like
He's
explored
cute
that
as
in
shit
that way.
though.
It's really it's really interesting. Like yeah, I do think that the potential to see that species explored more, all of the points that you brought up are really fascinating. The thing is that's not how they play him. They literally play him as only a comedic relief joke and look at how cute he is and look at how many plush toys we can sell. That
Hmm.
is his entire purpose, like
No,
in the
I
show.
can't argue that.
And that bothers me so much. And it also like I
It
feel
got
like
progressively worse after
yeah, it
season
just
1 it was fine, and then but yeah, no,
yeah.
I won't argue at all because season
And I think
2
that
and
that
3.
happens because and of course, I don't know how things actually happen behind the scenes, obviously, but it really does feel like season 1 came out, you have him become this gigantic thing, and the reaction to him is the way that it is, and they just pivot so I don't know if pivot's
Mhm.
the right word, but, like, they lean so hard into that, and it's like, "Get this little dude out of my face, please." Like, can we
Right.
focus on anything else? And it also it's like, that's the main thing for him where I'm just like, I'm over him. I don't really like the comedy for him doesn't land for me. Like, yeah, he's pretty cute, but like he like detracts too much from the rest of the stuff that's happening because he also like narratively he then is just like baggage that you're like, oh well, Den has to find someone to watch him so that he can go do the things that the show is going to be about mostly. And granted, you could also though argue that the show ends up being more about this, like the relationship between them and him, and that being used to then further Den's character, which I do think is interesting stuff. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. I think in season 1 it was really good because it was doing this thing that has also become super popular in the last like I don't know, like 5 or 10. It's always been a popular trope, but like a lot of things have been doing it of like the lone wolf and cub story, right?
Mhm.
And doing that and hitting that trope. And that's what season 1 is. It's just the like adventure of the week and then on him also having to deal with this little kid like having around. And I think that is solid in itself. The execution in some areas I think is where it gets a little bit wonky. Um and I think that the way that they write Grogu and like use him kind of detracts from it being better in those areas. Um, I do definitely though agree that like season 1 100% came out swinging. I think it was awesome. Loved it at the time. I think it still holds up on rewatch. It's been a little bit since I rewatched it, but like it's still
Mhm.
super solid. Again, like you said, I mean the use of the volume in that season is fantastic. Like I remember after seeing, I don't remember if they talked about it ahead of the episode coming out, I think, or what, I don't remember if it was before or after. Um, but like I remember seeing the images and then seeing the behind the scene images, of the same shots and be like, wow, this is, I mean, it's incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I think that they lost that a little, like that use of that as the show went on. It just started progressively looking less good. I think that reflects in a lot of the other shows too. We'll talk about those later. But like I just think that the first season was really strong there, and the idea of a Star Wars show, I think, is really interesting and something that you can get a lot out of because of the way that series and TV is just structured completely differently. I think that they kind of um, didn't necessarily always approach that in the correct mindset, though, and instead, I think the first season was good about it
First season was fine. They were like
with like
45-minute episodes.
yeah, with like being a strict like episodic thing and like understanding that it's a TV show model and that kind of thing. But then I don't know, somewhere they started treating them more like longer movies kind of or like things like that or just I don't know, something like that. And I think it loses its focus as a like TV show and structured in that way. Um but I think the idea is great. I liked the just the concept of like following a bounty hunter around
Mhm.
and like his character there I think is interesting and really good and like that's the part of the show that was like the most intriguing to me and seeing
Absolutely, yeah.
this side of Star Wars in that way even though and I've talked about it like a couple weeks ago. I don't remember what episode, but the bounty hunters and the crime syndicates and all that stuff aren't even close to being my like favorite part of the Star Wars galaxy. But I think that if you're going to do like a Star Wars show, like this is a golden like topic to do that with.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that as the show went on and as the other things happened around it, it kind of lost some of
It
that.
definitely lost its identity. It strayed further and
Yeah,
further away as the seasons went on.
yeah, which is not like I liked season 2 a lot. I think my favorite episodes are probably all from season 2. I
Oh,
mean,
I
I
agree,
know
yeah.
like my top 2 or I mean, yeah, probably all like my top 5 episodes of the show are from season 2.
I know that
Um,
Ahsoka one's up there.
yeah, the Ahsoka one's my favorite one.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
That's probably my favorite Ahsoka in the whole Mando-Verse, is that episode. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, and I forget the name of it, the one where they're trying to, where he ends up having to like go into the Imperial like camp or
Oh,
whatever.
that was the second to last one of that,
Yeah, like
I don't
that
remember its
one's just
name,
like
but yeah.
top
Oh,
tier.
and
Um,
it's got Bill Burr, man.
yeah, dude, you not love Bill Burr, like it's so good.
Oh, man, my friend is a huge Bill Burr fan and does not watch Star Wars, but he was like, I told him he was in 2 Mando episodes, and he was like,
Mhm.
"I'll watch those 2 episodes with you," and he loved them.
Yeah.
Only watched those
No,
2 episodes, but it was great,
honestly,
like,
he does like a
he's
fantastic
awesome.
job
Yeah, he's
also,
great.
yeah,
Bring back
like
Migs, man. I love Migs.
mad props to him. Yeah, so I think that season 2 was super strong also. I don't love the finale of season 2 a lot because
Okay.
I think that it's introducing and leaning into what will then I think become the worst tendencies of the show and the surrounding shows in the
That's
finale.
totally fair. So I like the finale, but I do not like the fact that he did go with Luke because the entirety of season 2 was built up as them staying together.
Yeah.
So
It's a weird
that was why it was like it was a I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. It was awesome, but also story-wise it was a very strange way to conclude the season.
I think a lot of the story stuff that happens in these seasons is trying to have your cake and eat it too thing because they're like building up them staying together, but then you get this like super impactful emotional moment of them not, and the way that that all ends. Like they play that moment really well,
Yeah, no, it's
and
that's why I can forgive it a little bit.
yeah, like it's a fantastic moment, but then you go and undo that, not even in the same show, in a different show, and
I
so
can yeah, we'll
then you
talk
get,
about
which we'll
that.
talk about, but, like, then you get the, like, "Oh, well, we had this emotional moment, but then also we still get to have them being, like, buddy and, like, being together," and so we get that side of it too, and I think that they just try to do that with a lot of the different things and what they're kind of operating with and doing here. Um, but yeah, I think those are, like, most of my main thoughts about, like, the show, just
Mhm,
Mando directly itself without tying into, like, a bunch of the other stuff. I think super solid, especially at the beginning, season 2, just kind of I think you put it best, like, lost its what I thought that, the identity, I guess, should have been or was going to go, originally, um, in concept. But yeah, still great stuff.
yeah, so I'm ready to get into this, to the future episodes. So when we return, Alex and I will discuss how the Mandoverse exploded with spin-offs, crossovers, and more. We'll be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Kate.
And I'm Alex, enjoying this show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Bending the Narrative.
We're your one-stop shop for all things Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Each week, we break down an episode from the series and discuss our favorite moments, with a particular focus on the characters and narrative threads that tie the series together.
In addition to discussing the original series, we're also tackling things from The Legend of Korra to the novels and the comics as well.
Now, join us as we travel into the world of Team Avatar and discuss one of the greatest animated series of all time on Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Framing the Force. Before the break, we discussed the early days of Star Wars streaming with The Mandalorian. Now, we wanted to discuss how this era of Star Wars has expanded exponentially since 2019. In the last 5 years, we've had 6 seasons and 3 spin-off shows from storylines started with Din Djarin. Couple that with a canceled show, and we've got a huge expansion of Star Wars live action television, all centered around a space cowboy and his very small little green friend. Alex, let's start with you this time. How have you enjoyed the expansion of the Mandoverse over the past half decade?
I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah,
How
I
have you
mean,
not enjoyed the experience?
um, I think I mean, this sounds super harsh. I think it's just gotten worse to me, like it diminishing returns from here on out. And that's like a pretty big blanket statement. And I think there's still good stuff in there, but I just think on the whole, turning it into this MCU light Disney Plus little universe thing and a post Return of the Jedi Star Wars is like not has not been great for me. Like I don't I think it's making the Galaxy One like too small because it's like,
Hmm.
well, we don't need all of these things to be this connected. Like I would like to see some other eras and characters and things like that. Um, is like a big like overhead complaint thing. But then I also just think that like it was too much stuff that also wasn't the best quality. Like we were talking about the volume. I think that that's one of the big ones for me is the use of it in some of the shows and how that has progressively looked not as great. And just in general, the shows looking not and not feeling like I don't know. We were talking about it earlier with like Star Wars being on the front end of like revolutionizing technology and like presentation and stuff like this, and it just not like I don't know if you compare how the shows look to how the sequel films look like and I know on the one hand it's a bit unfair because there's a TV budget and a film budget but then also you can look at other TV shows that have smaller budgets than some of these shows do and
Right.
yet they look exponentially better and I know that how something like looks isn't the end all be all of it but at the same time this is a visual medium I should have a good time looking at what the thing that's being
Hmm.
presented is and I think that like the production value on those is not necessarily where would want it to be for a lot of them. Um, it like I don't know, and it's tough too because I know that there are so many talented people working on all of these that are all putting in like so much genuine effort. Obviously, no one's setting out to make a subpar anything, and I think that they are really like all doing their best. I don't know, so it's tough to like critique it on that him, but I'm like, oh, I know how much goes into it, and like I can't even imagine. So I think that it's something that also just makes it even more perplexing to me because I'm like, I know how much money went into this, and I know all of the people and the love and the care and the thing like that. So I'm like, it's a really confusing thing. I think that's been one of the big things for me is just the overall, like, production value of it, or,
I
like,
agree with that.
what I'm getting out of it, like, I'm like, and it makes Star Wars feel less special because of that, and that sucks. Like, the fact
Mhm.
that I'm not like, there's a Star Wars show coming out in a couple months that, like, I'm not excited at all, and that's wild. I remember being, like, it's beyond hyped for a new Star Wars project and the idea of getting to see a new Star Wars thing, and now it's like, meh, like,
Mhm.
whatever. That's a big bummer, like, to get that feeling, and as the result for me of just like a couple years of like, well, we got a handful of things over like not that long of a time period, and they were all just like fine to me. And so like I think that that's a really big misstep in there. And then yeah, the actual like internal story stuff, like the paying off the season 2, or like undoing the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, like in not even the next season of The Mandalorian and a different spinoff show thing, is a choice for sure.
Oh,
Like the fact that someone as a casual viewer of Star Wars could like just be wanting to watch The Mandalorian and like have absolutely no idea why season 3 is
he's
the way that it
back.
is because they didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett is ridiculous on the one
Yeah,
hand. Like it's just absurd. Um and yeah, so like that stuff is whatever. The Ahsoka series, though not as like directly connected to the rest of the Mando stuff, still is because of her introduction in the Mando-Verse, and
and her
like
whole plot line, like finding Thrawn.
yeah, and all of that. Like the Book of Boba Fett is a weird thing too, and like bringing in Cad Bane for like what? Why did we do that? We
Just to
didn't need
kill
to.
him.
Yeah, just to kill him, like for no reason. It's becomes, and this is what I think I meant when I said that the season 2 finale set up some of the worst impulses I feel for the Mando-verse, and that's just like it feels like such pandering and like putting fan service things on the
Because they saw the
screen.
reactions to whoever
Yeah,
showed up next week.
and like uh, people will absolutely lose their minds over it, which like I'm all for whatever makes people like
I
hyped
love
about
seeing
whatever
the
thing
jump from animation
that they
to live action, but I mean, it doesn't have to be like forced in there for
yeah.
not really to ultimately serve a purpose in the end.
My thing is that I like just the idea of like, so I'll see like I'll use the like Anakin and Ahsoka and like seeing the Clone Wars stuff like in live action. Like I know so many people are like, oh, like I can't believe we got to see Anakin and Ahsoka like Clone Wars done in live action. Like that's so amazing. I it like the idea of that thing happening is not enough for me. I would like it to be presented in a good way, and
Mhm.
like I don't feel like they're doing that. Like at that point, it's not worth it to me. I'll watch the animated thing. Like I would rather the thing be done well and like presented in that way as opposed to like just having it. Like just having the thing is not I'm like okay, that doesn't do anything. Like make it important or meaningful or like look really damn good, look as good as the like animated version that we saw. And like it doesn't. It just straight up doesn't to me. And so then you also get this weird thing where like you have like specifically in the Anakin and Ahsoka stuff, right? Like you've got Ahsoka and Anakin like interacting in live action, and you have like Hayden Christensen and Rosario Dawson playing them, and they're playing the characters of like animated Anakin and Ahsoka interacting together and like getting this emotional payoff and stuff. But like those aren't the versions of the characters that have that emotional weight. It's
Mhm.
Matt Lanter, right? That's his
Yeah.
and okay, him and Ashley Eckstein. Like they're the ones who I spent 7 years like interacting on this level. And so then you have this weird like simulacrum of this thing being an imitation of this other thing that we're now getting here, and like you're only going to get diminishing returns from that. Like the best case scenario of those actors portraying like like the Clone Wars version of Anakin and Ahsoka is you're going to be like, oh, they're doing a good job impersonating this version of the character, or like bringing that version of the character to life, as
Mhm.
opposed to being their own version of the character, right? Like if your goal is to like recreate that thing, like you can only possibly be like as good as like, oh, you did a good job like representing that
You
thing, and
can't
like
you
that's
can't like make a new ceiling for you.
yeah,
You're already
like, you're
limited.
always stuck. Like, you
Yeah.
like, the best possible thing is like, "Oh, yeah, they did a job of that," and, like, fine, but to me, that's not exciting. Like, I don't
Right.
and I feel like for a lot of the decisions that they made with this, it was like, okay, like, who can we bring in, what famous character, well-known fan favorite character can we show off, like what cameo can we have, how can we connect all these people together, how can we have this big event thing, and like all of these things, one, I don't think are necessarily conducive to good storytelling, and two, just like the value of it, I don't think was there on a lot of them either. It really feels, I know that people like bring out this analogy, but like it really does feel like just like mashing action figures together. Like it feels like you get your hands on like all the toys that you have and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna have this guy fight this guy, and
That's
like wouldn't it
exactly
be
what
cool if
Boba
these
Fett
people,
was.
like, you want to be cool if these people like met. Like we had Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano have a conversation, and like it's the weirdest, most non-satisfying, and just weird, like odd thing I've ever seen. And I don't think any part of it works for me. And like that should be a really big and like wild moment, but it just doesn't read. And it also just happened in a random scene in a Book of Boba Fett show that like we're never going to get anything more on. And it's also weird that that even exists in the first place. Like I don't know. I've been rambling and going all over the place with this, but like, what have you thought about the explosion of the
So
Mando-Verse and
I want to
how?
start off with a hot take that has nothing to do with the
Okay,
Mando-Verse. Just stop
okay,
making anything related to the Clone Wars. Thank you. Moving on to my next
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
moving on to my next point. I'm gonna leave it short and sweet. No, I like it. It's totally fair. Most, like, pretty much all of what you said is really like, it's a very, if you're a diehard fan, I feel like if you look at it like all of Star Wars rationally, you're kind of in this weird gray area. And like, cuz everything, there's good Star Wars, there's bad Star Wars, there always has been, there always will be, and you can
Hmm.
critique something about every single Star Wars film, project, whatever, including
Yeah.
The Empire Strikes Back. Why, what, how much time passes in that movie, for example? I can go on and on. But
Oh, that's one of the
you
best things about just as a whole
yeah.
time in film as a whole.
It's so funny. Anyway,
Yeah.
but you can make little minor critiques or major critiques about every single one. And like, but with the newer stuff, it just feels like I don't like going into a new project where, when I used to go into a new, like when I was a kid growing up, what's gonna be this next big cool Star Wars like film I'm gonna see? It was obviously the prequel trilogy, and I was let
Hmm.
down by the Attack of the Clones movie, but that's okay. Um, but now it's, I don't want to be going into a new project, and it really, I hate that I feel this way. But at this point, it's like, I, is this project going to be like Andor or Mando, or is it gonna, like, in terms of like, or Mando season one,
Hmm.
Andor or Mando season
Oh,
one,
I knew
like
what you meant.
quality, yeah, or is
Didn't
it
even
gonna,
need the qualifier.
or am I
I was
gonna
like, he's
get
not
like
fucking season
Mando
three.
season three, or like Book
Right.
of Boba Fett, or I don't. Now, I don't think Obi-Wan is a bad show. I think it's a good show, but I think the production values are awful. Like, am I going to get something like that? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
want to
Yeah.
go. I don't like. I enjoyed Obi-Wan. This is not what it's. We're not talking. We're not here to talk about Obi-Wan, but I
The
enjoyed it.
one
But
of
I
the
don't.
like other shows that came out.
Yeah, but I just think it looks like crap.
Hmm.
So I don't want to go into a new Star Wars project with my hype being focused on, how is this product going to look? Like, is it going to look like, I can't even describe what is so off-putting visually about, like, just Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, some parts, a nice chunk of Ahsoka, honestly. Um, and even here and there in Acolyte, I don't think it was nearly as bad as those other
Acolyte
ones.
looked better. It's still
Yeah,
okay, dude. I'm gonna. This is
I think
the
it was
like
because it was
the
on set, like on live locations.
yeah. One of the
But
things, they look like the most. I don't know how else to explain it, and I've said, and it's gonna sound harsh. They look like the most expensive fan films I've ever seen. Like I
right,
don't
like,
like
I
they
don't know
look
how to explain it. It just
good,
looks like,
but somehow cheap at
someone
the
just
same
kind of
time. I don't.
smeared mud over the like camera lens almost. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
how else to describe it. It just looks murky.
Hmm.
So
Oh yeah,
that's
for that. Yeah, yeah.
like, I don't know. It just doesn't look like that crisp Star Wars colorful visual representation we're used to. And I
Hmm.
hate that I go into a new or a new project. What am I gonna get? I'm not expect like, I'm no longer like expecting a really cool top of the line, the next big pop culture thing.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm
which is a
like
huge
left with
bummer.
question marks, and it's a big bummer. I'm gonna watch them. I'm gonna be excited that we're getting new Star Wars content regardless. That's all like. I'll fit it into the canon. Like it's gonna fit into the canon in their way, but I'll make my arguments in my head, my little like rationales, my reasoning here and there and whatnot. I'll fit it all in. It'll make sense. It won't be my favorite per se, but
Mhm.
I'll still accept it, and it's still, it's Star Wars. At the end of the day, that's what I'm here for. But it really sucks not going into with that fiery excitement that I was used to for so many, like for most of my life.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean,
So
like, I remember watching the Mando season 1 and 2, and even the Book of Boba Fett episodes dropping at, like, 2 a.m., like, either
yeah.
staying up or setting an alarm and waking up to watch those immediately, and at the time, I was also posting GIFs, like, immediately that morning and, like,
Hmm.
staying up watching those and spending hours doing that, and that hype being there. Yeah, and it's just not that's not how I feel about any of these seasons anymore, or like the projects, and that's a like gigantic bummer. Um,
I mean, I think
yeah,
the only one that had my excitement ready to go was the Acolyte, because it was billed as that Sith show pre
mhm.
Phantom Menace and everything, and I can't even be excited about a season two.
Yeah, I
So
just don't. Rough. Yeah, I just don't. Like I don't know. Also, though, the most wild thing is that I think that one of the best episodes in the entire Mando-verse stuff is like pretty sure it's episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, which is the
yeah,
Return of the
that
Mandalorian.
doesn't have Boba Fett in it.
Yeah, the one episode that doesn't have Boba Fett, but Bryce Dallas
The next
Howard is
episode has it for
ridiculous.
like
Like,
5 minutes in it too. It's like it's crazy.
and just
What?
incredible director there. I think that is one thing that the show's had that's been cool to see, especially in the earlier seasons, was the different directors on
Right?
the
Yeah, the different
episodes.
cycling directors, how they
Um,
each told their own
and
version,
you
but
could feel their styles in them
hmm
too, which I think was really cool.
but they all
Um,
meshed really well together. Like the
but
story
yeah,
was still like it didn't hinder from the story at all.
I think that it felt like it lost out a little bit, especially by the time we got to season 3, and because I feel like at that point it became the huge, like this is all. It just feels like phase 1 of the MCU, honestly. It's like all these
Hmm.
projects are now, like, connected, we have a bunch of these things that are happening,
Or building up
and,
to
like
something, but they don't always need to be like I've said in a past episode. I don't need a trilogy. Give me one
yeah,
thing.
like, I don't need yeah, it doesn't all need to be the most, like, building to one story, like, a story can be its own story, and that's fine,
Hmm.
um, which whatever, but I feel like we're getting into it, and we're starting to talk about kinda where it's going and where things are building, so we'll take a quick break, but after the break, we're going to discuss the future of the Mando-Verse, as well as Star Wars' refocus on theatrical content. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Framing the Force. Before the break, we discussed the expansion of the Mandoverse with spin-offs like the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and Skeleton Crew. Now we wanted to dive into what's next for this era of Star Wars with Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka, Season 2, and The Mandalorian and Grogu still forthcoming, plus Dave Filoni's climactic story event film that will close out this entire era. Robby, with rumors that the upcoming film will be the end of Din Djarin and Grogu's story, what are your expectations and hopes for the end of the Mandoverse?
Um, I don't know, man. I mean, this is the Sith in me speaking, and I always want this to happen every now and then. This would be a great time. Kill Din. Kill Din in
Yeah,
the movie. Give me something really like emotional. Give me a nice scene with it. I think it'd be a great time to just get rid of him. Um, that's my thoughts on the movie. And as if the movie is ending the Mandalorian storyline, I don't know. I think you get rid of Din, but
yeah,
that's just me. Um, I am excited for Ahsoka season 2. I liked Ahsoka season 1. It's probably that either Ahsoka or Acolyte. I really don't know which one I like more in terms of just personal favorite shows, just because of just what's being told. I gravitate towards the lightsabers, the Force stuff. Like
yeah,
Andor doesn't scratch that itch for me. Boba Fett didn't scratch that itch for me. Mando maybe gets a little tickle, but like I liked Obi-Wan because like it's up there for me because of the whole Force. Like I gravitate towards lightsabers. That's why I'm here. So
yeah,
like I did enjoy Ahsoka. I'm really curious to see what they do with Balin, because Oh god, he was
Yeah.
such a loss. Just an incredible actor performance, just intriguing character. Brought so much
Hmm.
life to Balin. So, R.I.P. Ray, but I
Yeah.
really want to see. I know they're recasting him, so
Hmm.
it's big shoes to fill, and I really hope whoever they do get for him does. Like, I mean, I don't expect it to be 100% what Ray did,
That's
but
just such a tough position.
it's not fair on who's ever filling the position. But I wish them the best, and I'm excited to see what they do with that, and I'm really excited to see what they do with like the Mortis gods and stuff.
Hmm.
So I because that the before I mean even I don't call the Siege of Mandalore my favorite arc because I feel like that's just like a cop out.
Hey, man.
For like it's just like not even a it's just clearly
Like,
S
of
tier.
course, it's the best arc of the.
Like there's no
It's
arguing
not even.
against it.
Yeah,
It's not a competition. So I like to call
it's not.
the Mortis arc my favorite arc because
That's
I
fair.
just don't like to. I don't think it's fair. I think
Yeah,
everyone's gonna say Siege of Mandalore is the best, so you might as well go what your second favorite arc is.
yeah,
So
that's a good
The
point.
Mortis is my favorite arc, I guess. So I really want to see what they do with that storyline and how they incorporate it. And I just like all that weird force, like the mysticism, like the
Hmm.
lore and how they play with it. But they never break it. They just really bend the lore with it because there's not really anything crazily established. It's a very vague kind
Hmm.
of part of Star Wars. And it's fun that it's vague, but it's so vague that you can actually still do things with it and still have it that mysteriousness behind it. So
Yeah,
I am excited for that with Ahsoka season 2. Skeleton Crew, we'll see how it is. Like,
we talked
I don't
about that.
know. Yeah,
Go watch
we've talked about that in a
Mandalorian.
previous episode. um, yeah, I mean, I hope we don't see a Boba Fett season 2.
Man said I have one comment actually.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to pick up off that, I think the first thing I wanted to touch on is I'm 100% in the same camp as you as far as I don't think I'm exclusively like, not that to imply that you are either, but like I also like originally am drawn to Star Wars because of like the Force and lightsabers and stuff. And like if I have to pick a favorite thing, like that's gonna be it. Cause I mean, like
Mhm.
it's just awesome. Um,
No one else
but
has
yeah, I
anything
do.
similar.
Yeah, like I do think that the mysticism, the spiritual side of things, and the metaphysics and stuff that you get with the Force and the Mortis gods and like all of that is one of the most interesting parts of Star Wars to me. And I think, as you were saying, it's like it's because it's an intangible thing that is not strictly defined and by nature will not be strictly defined. Like you'll get explanations for things, but that's not explaining the whole. And
Mhm.
because of that, they're able to do a lot with it. And I think that's awesome and super fun. I do think, speaking on Ahsoka, that that was the most intriguing part of that show to me. And I think the best parts of that show is definitely like the narrative concepts that they were entering and exploring and setting up.
Mhm.
The Mortis gods, obviously. I mean, yeah, everything to do with Balin, the worlds between worlds stuff, like all of that, fantastic. I think a lot of what Ahsoka's doing on paper is like phenomenal. I should adore this show. In execution, I don't, unfortunately. I think there are still some bright spots in there, but I am very excited to see what they like. I think it's super cool just to let Star Wars be weird wizard space shit. Like
Yep.
that's awesome.
That's what I'm here for.
It's and this is a topic for a future episode at some point. But like, I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not Star Wars is like sci-fi or fantasy. It's both, but like it's 100% fantasy. Like you're like they're space wizards, dude. Like that's it. Like they're space wizards that use magic. Like,
Mhm.
and so I think that whenever you're really like leaning into that, I think you're playing with the franchise's strengths. You're playing with the best parts of the mythology, and so getting to see that explored more in Ahsoka season 2 would be awesome. Will be awesome. Presuming I'm interested to see how much of the season is focused on that versus how much of the season is focused on the Thrawn and tying it all together of it all with the rest of the Mando-Verse stuff.
I don't know how they're gonna do this in an 8 episode season with 40-minute episodes. Like if they're trying to
My
wrap
head
this up.
my head tells me this is unfortunately going to be a lot more focused on the not mysticism stuff and more so on the like heir to the empire, but
I
different.
I really
Um,
hope you're wrong, but I
I
also
hope
hope that
I'm wrong
I
too,
also
but
hope that
like I
I'm wrong,
don't
but I don't doubt
I
your
don't
predictions.
I just like it's hard to see it as not being that. But yeah, so I think that stuff from Ahsoka season 2 will be really cool. I do think Rosaria is also great as
Yeah.
Ahsoka. Like Ahsoka's my favorite character. I think she does a great job. It's very different, obviously, from Ahsoka in
Hmm.
the animated, but like as she should
But
be.
she's also just a much older, more mature Ahsoka at this point. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think she does definitely like helps that you get those seeds planted in Rebels with how Ahsoka matures, and she's almost more or less there at that point. But I think
mhm,
Rosario really helps adapt that, like almost 10 years down the line from Rebels, like
yeah,
really kind of morphs her into this very much adult Ahsoka. I think she's a very great stepping stone in that bridge to the
mhm,
Rebels Ahsoka and completing the at least maturity wise of Ahsoka, like completing
yeah.
that kind of growing up of her.
Yeah, I do. I agree there, and I like that. And I love the. I mean, the whole Ahsoka the White stuff is awesome as a like character trope
Oh
thing,
yeah.
and then also like visual like that stuff's awesome. I love that. I will say this is a super like picky, just like annoying fanboy nitpick thing. Her Leku were wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't
Like
go. Okay, I
they're
was gonna say something
wrong.
too.
They're
No, no,
100%
God,
wrong. Like
please.
they should be way longer than they are. I'm so sorry. You can do it. Figure it out. Like I know it's at the end of the day, it's
Stunts,
not that
whatever.
important.
That's not the argument I want to hear. I mean, we had
Like I
long
know
ass Leku in 2002. Like,
hey man, they figured out how to get Batman to turn his head in the costume, figure out the Leku. I don't like figure it out, dude. I know at the end of the day it's not the most important thing,
I
like
mean,
whatever.
Shakti had long boys back in
It's a fake
2002.
alien species in a fantasy thing with wizards and laser swords. Like I know it's not the biggest deal, but it does really bother me. They're longer in the Siege of Mandalore than they are in the show, and that's just not how
And
they work.
also, even though it's different species, Ula 83 Return of the Jedi is full on dancing. These things are
Oh yeah.
swinging around. You
Mhm.
can do it. It was done in
Yeah.
83. Please do something. And
I just
also, the color seems a little off to me, but that's a super
it's
nitpick.
not as well, this is just part of what
I
happens
don't
with
know if
like
it's
the
the
trans
blue or what. I don't know if it's their
it's not as
species.
saturated. It's just not as like it's not as a saturated color as it
Hmm.
is in the animation. And this is a thing, and like you can argue all day about well, like it's things that are going to happen when you transition from like
Right.
animation to live action and like not having
That's more of a
as
super nitpick,
accented.
but actually in terms of the length, fix it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that like, and of course, like I don't expect them to look like how they do in Rebels because like that's also super stylized and like stuff. But lengthwise, like
I mean, get them a little longer, please. You gave them a
yeah, like
couple
come.
more inches
I
for
just like the
like
whole thing is
the
they just grow
show,
their
but
whole
give me
lives and like they don't shrink, man. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. No, I
Anyways,
agree there.
that's a super like fanboy nitpicky thing about the stuff. But yeah, so into the more conclusion of the Mando-Verse things that it's like the Mandalorian and Grogu and then the event film. Okay, one, the Mandalorian and Grogu. We were kind of talking about it in the last segment, but just like approaching having an upcoming Star Wars project and me just having nothing but apprehension and like dread about it sucks. Like I
Hmm.
don't like
Also, why are
I
you
don't
ending a show in a movie? I don't like that.
because because like the budget is probably better spent in this runtime, which like I could have told you that.
Yeah.
And like so like I kind of get it on the one hand. And I think that I do think that the more focused runtime and all the budget being to that might make for a better result than like season 3 of Mandalorian.
Hmm.
At the same time, though, I don't have super high hopes for this one, especially not. And like, I know they showed a little bit of footage that got leaked at whatever event it was, which also con footage should not be exclusive anymore. I don't know why companies still do that. Everyone's going to record it and post it on the internet, and now everyone's just watching your thing in like 240p from a cell phone footage. What are you doing? Anyways, that footage didn't look good either. I know it's not finished and like in progress and shouldn't.
Hmm.
It's not a final representation of the thing, but like, yeah, um, so like, I don't know. I don't really have like any expectations for the Mando and Grogu movie. I hope I like it more than I did season 3. Din dying heroically would be cool, I guess. Rumors are also though that he might appear in future projects outside, like after this movie,
I wouldn't put it past him making the out
which
of this movie alive.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And so, like, I could see that. I don't really at this point, I'm not that invested in their story, so,
I don't
like,
even know what their story is anymore. Like,
what are they doing?
I
I
have
mean, I know
no idea.
Ahsoka's like, oh, well, I
They've
Ahsoka's gonna
ended this show
recruit them,
like
I guess,
twice
like
already. They ended it with Luke. They could have ended it there. They could have and they could have ended it with season 3. Like they're sitting on their own little house, like they got their own little space on Navarro, hanging
mhm.
out. Like, I mean, I'm glad, I guess, that they're finally like giving a definitive ending, but also like I don't know
They
what they're
just
gonna
did that.
do. What they're gonna Yeah, I know. They first of all they just did that.
It's
A
again
second
having the cake
time,
and eating it too. It's like, "Oh, we wanna
it's
have this cool, like, happy definitive ending thing right here, but then also we need them to come back for the Super Avengers team up with deepfake Han, Luke, and Leia fighting Grand Admiral Thrawn with also Ahsoka." Like, I just because, like, honestly, what's the over under on that? Like, on the fact that we get the trio in this, like
not that Alden's right there or anything.
not in Mando, but in the, like, Dave Filoni,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, no, I know what you're talking
like,
about.
I feel like I feel the over on that is pretty high. I'm not gonna lie, like,
And
and I don't
it's
like
it's
that.
just weird. Like you could, I mean, you can replace oh god, I can't, I know his last name is Card. I can't think of his first name. But the smuggler in Heir to the Empire, I guess you could replace him with Mando, slot him
I
in
haven't
there.
read Heir to the
Yeah, like
Empire, can't lie.
you could slot Ahsoka into Mara Jade, I guess, but not like from the same story perspective. You're just another lightsaber
I think
wielding
you're just,
person.
like
I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know what they're
that's
trying to
the
do.
other thing that's super weird to me about this, and this is my arguably my main problem with Ahsoka is the handling of Thrawn, and, like, it just feels like Filoni wants this Heir to the Empire loose adaptation thing to happen, but now he's getting to do it also with the character that like he created with Ahsoka, and so like which like I adore Ahsoka, I'll take Ahsoka and like all of the content basically, but at the same time I'd rather it be like super solid, and this I feel is not, and like
Hmm.
it just feels like he wants Heir to the Empire to exist in the bare bones like Admiral Thrawn is the big threat post Return of the Jedi, the heroes have to band to take him down. And like now we just have this opportunity where like the Mando-Verse ended up being a way to do that. And so now
Hmm.
it's like
They're
throwing all
gonna
the characters.
shoehorn it
Yeah, like we got to throw everyone together in a way to like make that then happen where it's like Thrawn is the big threat and the heroes have to team up and take him down. And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing the entire original trilogy or the like original trio in there. We've already seen Luke in the show. Like they're clearly not afraid to do that. And so but like I don't need or really want that, and it also just like feels weird. I don't know. I haven't read it, Heir to the Empire, but from what I know, I mean, like everyone loves it who has read it and says it's fantastic. I'm sure it's incredible.
Oh, I
Honestly, I
think his
probably
name is
won't.
Talon Card. It just came to me, sorry.
That's a sick name, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's Talon.
um,
I think. Don't quote me on that.
but like I don't know. I'm sure it's fantastic. I probably won't like it as much as most people because I'm predisposed to the characterization that Thrawn has now. But that's my big problem is that like I feel like Thrawn's characterization now doesn't necessarily gel with the way that things play out in Heir to the Empire or like Thrawn's motivation in Heir to the Empire.
Hmm.
And so it's like
In Heir of the
uh,
Empire, he was the next guy in the Imperial line, but
right. And
now
now we
he's
know,
fighting for a completely different cause, and that contract is up at this point. The Emperor is dead.
yeah,
The
like he has
Empire is gone. You don't need that protection.
mm-mm.
So
And
go back home.
like
Like,
it doesn't work on two levels. It doesn't work on Thrawn's side because yeah, he has no reason to still be doing this. And then it also doesn't work because we now as an audience know that the backup plan is Palpatine eventually. Right? Like
yeah,
it's not that Thrawn was the backup plan for after like for the Empire at small. It was Palpatine. And so like it's this weird
I don't think
thing.
there's a need to tell the story. Just, we have the sequels at this point, and the
Yeah.
original story was the sequels. Like, I mean, the original story, the original Heir to the Empire, was it was that sequel trilogy,
Mhm.
and we have a sequel trilogy now, and we know Palpatine's coming back. So, do we really need? I don't know. It doesn't
That's
make
a
sense
whole
to me.
That's a whole other thing that I think has been super interesting, and I don't know how I feel about
Shoehorning the
it.
cloning into everything.
Yeah, I don't know how like, and that's a not even just Mando-Verse thing. That's a whole like media
Bad Batch,
wise, yeah,
everywhere
like
they can.
the film, which it's not. I'm super conflicted on this because it's a thing that Star Wars has done. I mean, it's the entire
Mhm.
reason the Clone Wars exists, as far as like filling in the gaps between the movies with other stuff, and because
But it's like
there's
an
a lot of
extra effort is being made to justify your rush decision to tie up your trilogy. And
yeah, and so I don't know. That's interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, even all of that stuff is super abruptly handled in the Mando-Verse stuff, which feels weird to call it like 3 season like play out of this thing is like abruptly handled, but it feels like that. I don't know how you end up with that. Like I don't know how you end up with, because they're what, 8 episode seasons each, I think.
yeah, about
So
that,
like
give or
I don't
take.
know how you end up with 24 episodes and it still feels like this plot line was a little bit rushed to its conclusion.
Mhm.
um but yeah, that
It
so
took its
I don't
time in the
know.
beginning and then it raced. It
Yeah,
just started sprinting.
which
So, and
is
I like
fun.
when after season 1, it could have been like I thought it could have been like a 4 or 5 season show at that pace, like
Hmm.
the way they were telling it, I thought it'd been great. But
Yeah, but then it just, yeah, it like transitioned into the bringing everyone together and having all of these different characters and building to this thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm not hyped for this climactic final film. I cannot lie.
yeah,
I'm just most hyped to be on the other end of it, provided
I'm
there is another end of it and it's not just more of these movies set post Return of the
yeah,
Jedi between
I'm
Force
ready to
Awakens.
leave the post Return of the Jedi era. We had the sequel trilogies told. Like we have a bookend to the Skywalker saga. Just leave. Just go backwards. Go forwards.
I honestly
I
like I
don't care if
love
it's got Rey. I don't care if it's got Revan. Either end of the spectrum.
like I honestly think it was so great that the sequel trilogy put enough time between the original trilogy and it that like they skipped. I honestly think, I know this is probably controversial, I think it's incredible that we skipped the decades that we would have been seeing the original trio like in action doing stuff. I don't They had 3 movies about them. Like I don't need to see their exploits post Return of the Jedi. Like
Hmm.
I don't need 3 movies or shows or whatever like focused on that, or even that like time period. Like I
It's
think
just
it's,
so much money committed to something that is so small in terms
yeah.
of the timeline placement, and then just like it's just like it's rushed. It feels like it takes forever to get these things, but at the end of the day, it still feels rushed.
Hmm.
Whether it
It's
was
also, it's in that weird spot of like, and all prequels or things set in between whatever things where we already know X is going to happen in however many years or whatever endpoint, right? And it's one of those things where certain projects like are able to handle that exceptionally well, where that doesn't matter, like that doesn't negatively impact whatever's happening in the thing that you're watching. I don't think that the Mandoverse has necessarily been great about that, and the fact of like, well, we know all the stuff that's like coming from here, and like as far as like things having like consequence and meaning or feeling like they have consequence and meaning, it's like way less that, and it's more about like, hey, look at these, don't you recognize this person, and like aren't you glad that we're
didn't
referencing
you
this
watch
other
the
thing
Clone
again?
Wars? Now look, he's back.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't get these keys out of my face, dude. Like, I just stop, please. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not that. I'm excited to get on the back end, like I said, and hopefully see some more and different stuff. I also just hindsight. Disney Plus probably the worst thing that happened to Star Wars, in my opinion. Not gonna lie, we got Andor out of it, but at what cost, man? At what
Yeah,
cost? I just,
it should have been that bright future, and the way it's gone, it seems like it's just done more damage than
yeah.
positivity towards the franchise. But thank you everyone for tuning into episode 12 of Framing the Force. Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts. That's Batts on both Twitter and Instagram, and then also at one with the GIF for Star Wars gifs. That's only on Twitter.
And you can find me online at Robby_Weidemann. That's Robby with a Y _WEIDEMANN, and at SW Shot by Shot. Please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform where podcasts are found. Follow us on Twitter or, Elon's Stomping Grounds X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. Thank you to Peter Fraser for providing our series music, and thanks so much to everyone for listening, and we'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Hey, thank you for tuning in.
If you enjoyed this show, then be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out some of our other shows and videos here on the Aspect Network.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.